On January the 24th, 1964, the Pentagon stood up the most classified military outfit in American history. Officially, they did not exist. Their operations were disavowed by the U.S. government, and their casualty rate exceeded 100%, meaning every operator who entered this unit was guaranteed to suffer wounds, many several times over. Some never returned home at all. This is the tale of MACV-SOG, the Studies and Observations Group, a team so deadly they racked up a 158-to-1 kill ratio. They were so feared that enemy commanders built specialized counter-tracking squads specifically to hunt them down. And they were so secretive their relatives were told the men perished in training mishaps when they vanished behind enemy lines. Before we plunged into the shadows, you had to grasp what these men were leaving behind. During the early 1960s, America was bitterly split over Vietnam. While thousands of young men were drafted and shipped off to fight a war they could not comprehend, a tiny pool of volunteers were putting their hands up for something far more lethal. These were not ordinary troops. MACV-SOG drew from the absolute elite. Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Marine Force Recon, Air Force Commandos, even CIA spooks. But here is what set them apart from the rest. They volunteered 3 separate times. First for military duty, then for special forces, and lastly for MACV-SOG. By the time you finished selection, you understood precisely what you had signed yourself up for. The briefing felt nothing like anything in regular military service. They would inform you your life expectancy was counted in weeks, not years. That you faced an 85% likelihood of becoming a casualty within 3 months. And your chances of lasting 1 year were 1 in 4,000. Your assignments included cross-border raids into Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam, regions the United States government openly denied any American troops were operating in. Your targets included the Ho Chi Minh Trail, enemy supply caches, and North Vietnamese command posts. You would face odds of hundreds to 1, sometimes thousands to 1. During November the 1968, a 6-man MACV-SOG team clashed with an enemy force of 30,000 soldiers. They lived through it. Most sensible people heard those numbers and turned around. But the men who remained were not running on logic anymore. They were propelled by something deeper, a conviction that traditional warfare was not winning the war. That someone needed to venture where others would not. That this was the sole way to genuinely underscore the enemy. The instant you crossed that line, everything shifted. Your identity got stripped away. No dog tags, no patches, no ID cards. You hold weapons with serial numbers ground off. You don tiger-striped camouflage that matched South Vietnamese forces. Some teams even carried enemy weapons to confuse opposition forces. And if captured, the U.S. government would deny you ever lived. Operations usually ran 7 to 10 days. Deep helicopter insertion, then total radio silence unless you were compromised. The jungle itself was the first foe. Triple canopy rainforest, so dense you could not glimpse the sky. One wrong step could pitch you down a mountain. Every noise could spell death. But you were not operating alone. MACV-SOG teams featured indigenous fighters, Montagnard tribesmen from the Central Highlands, and Nung mercenaries from the Chinese border. These were not backup help. They were full-fledged teammates who frequently rescued American lives. The bond rested on absolute trust. Americans referred to them as the little people with profound respect. These warriors understood the jungle better than anyone and could read enemy movements from the smallest traces. I recall him saying SOG. Other men said no, they called it a highly classified outfit, but I remember SOG. He told us we had this program in Vietnam, his Special Operations Group, and you had to be 11F to qualify. That was your military occupational specialty, and that was tough. You had to be a senior non-commissioned officer, but they were going to allow this small batch of us to do it. There were 37 of us. Then the catch at the very end, he said, when this is all over, every graduate is heading directly to Vietnam to SOG, and 85% of you will be dead within 3 months. My first move was to ask, how many do you need to begin with if every 3 months 85% perish? It was over 4,000. So, your odds of surviving a year in SOG back then were 1 in 4,000, assuming he was not simply trying to spook us. What we lived through in Vietnam and what we endured was horrendous. Our chances of surviving were 1 in 4,000. It was so unique that when you emerge on the other side, you are never the same person again. Indigenous allies were not the only unusual partners. MACV-SOG drew a different sort of American warrior, too. World War II and Korean War veterans signed up to serve alongside 20-year-olds. Men such as Larry Thorne, a Finnish war hero who had battled the Soviets, then enlisted in the U.S. Army. He became SOG's first missing in action in Laos. The operations broke every convention of traditional warfare. You were not sent to seize ground. You were sent to gather intelligence, capture prisoners, and direct airstrikes onto targets that officially did not exist. Teams seeded seismic sensors along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. These devices transmitted data to circling aircraft monitoring enemy troop movements in real time. MACV-SOG supplied 75% of all intelligence on enemy activity along the trail. When sensors detected a major convoy, you would direct arc light strikes with B-52 bombers converting whole grid squares into moonscapes. The outcomes were devastating. During 1970, MACV-SOG recorded a 158-to-1 kill ratio, the highest in U.S. military history. But that ratio carried a cost. The North Vietnamese army was not dumb. They recognized SOG teams were active in their territory, and they adjusted. They established specialized counter-SOG units. They were professional trackers whose only assignment was hunting American reconnaissance teams. These were not standard infantry. They were the enemy's equivalent of special forces, and they were horrifyingly skilled at their job. A seasoned tracker could determine if you were American by inspecting your feces. The different diet, the different gut bacteria, it left a fingerprint. So, SOG operators ate local food, sipped local water, smoked Vietnamese cigarettes, anything to create a disguise. But even that was not always sufficient. Teams would be compromised and pursued for days, sprinting through the jungle with hundreds of enemy soldiers on their tail. Extraction helicopters sent to rescue them often absorbed heavy fire. Some teams pushed so hard for so long that they had to be lifted onto helicopters, their feet wrecked, dehydrated, barely awake. 9 men from MACV-SOG earned the Medal of Honor. 9 within a unit that at its height totaled only around 2,000 Americans. To put that in context, that is 1 Medal of Honor per 222 SOG operators. The United States military overall in Vietnam had 1 Medal of Honor recipient per 7,000 soldiers. Let me share with you one mission that demonstrates what these men faced. May 2, 1968, Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez learned that a 12-man SOG team was encircled and taking casualties in Cambodia. Benavidez was not part of the mission. He was at the forward operating base, but when he caught that radio call, he snatched his medical bag and leapt on an extraction helicopter. What unfolded next went on for 6 hours. Benavidez leapt from the helicopter into a firestorm. He was instantly shot, then struck by grenade shrapnel, then bayonet, then shot once more. Across the next 6 hours, he sustained wounds 37 times. Gunshots, shrapnel, bayonet wounds. He made multiple runs between wounded comrades and the helicopter, hauling them to safety while under continuous fire. When the extraction helicopter finally pulled away, Benavidez was so drenched in blood that the medic zipped him inside a body bag. He was assumed dead. Then he spat in the medic's face to prove he was still alive. That is the caliber of fighter MACV-SOG turned out. Men who refused to die when any sensible person would have surrendered. But heroism has a price that never appears in after-action reports. The psychological burden was immense. You would witness teammates die in your arms. You would make impossible calls about who to rescue when extraction was compromised. You would live when better men did not. During 1968 alone, every single MACV-SOG recon man was wounded at least once. Roughly half were killed. The unit sustained a 100% casualty rate throughout its entire existence. And the worst part, when you returned home, you could not speak about it. That silence followed you. Unlike World War II veterans who came back to parades, SOG operators returned to a country that loathed them, but they could not even defend themselves. Their operations were classified. They could not tell a soul where they had been or what they had done. So, they swallowed it, returned to ordinary life, and carried those secrets for decades. Some teammates were recorded as killed in training accidents. Their families never realized they had died in Laos or Cambodia because officially no Americans were there. 58 MACV-SOG operators remain missing in action in Laos. Their remains were never recovered. Only one prisoner of war from Laos ever made it back alive. It took until 2001 before the U.S. government formally acknowledged the existence and sacrifice of MACV-SOG. President Bush presented the unit with the Presidential Unit Citation 37 years after the unit was formed. It was decades too late for many who never made it back home. For the survivors, that recognition meant the world. It meant they could finally tell the truth to their families, that their nightmares had been real, and that their wounds carried meaning. The legacy continues in today's special operations. JSOC Delta Force, DevGru, all study MACV-SOG tactics. The gear, the strategies, and the mindset that SOG pioneered became the bedrock of modern special operations. Today, the jungles where they fought are quiet. The Ho Chi Minh Trail is now a tourist attraction. The classified bases have been reclaimed by the jungle, but the lessons endure. MACV-SOG showed that a small handful of highly trained warriors operating in total secrecy could deliver strategic effects far beyond their numbers. 2,000 Americans, a 158-to-1 kill ratio, and responsible for 75% of all intelligence on enemy operations. But it also showed the cost of such operations, the psychological scars, the families who never received closure, and the men who returned home but never truly left the jungle. The survivors carry those memories still. They gather every year sharing stories that cannot be fully told, and they honor the teammates who did not survive. There is an old saying within the special operations community: those who know do not talk. Those who talk do not know. MACV-SOG knew. For decades they did not talk, but their actions spoke louder than words ever could.